Okay, Rob Brown here with you on this Friday morning, July 15th, 2022, Sidelines edition, broadcasting live from the Red River Ford Toyota Studios in Wynne, Arkansas, city with a smile. And I tell you what, they take care of these cars. They look great. At 4:30 this morning, Matt, one of the young guys that works over here, was out there starting his job of washing every car on the lot. And there are a lot of cars on this lot. They'll be open as they are every day, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Rusty, Howard, Greg, the crew are all in here on the sales floor. Cecil, Nate, Stacy, they're here. They get here early. They are also open on Saturdays. The service department, 7:30 to 12:30, 25 service bays, people. You'll love dealing with them. And remember, follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Sponsors, we got a lot of them this first hour, brought to you by Gateway Tire and Service Center. We go the distance for our customers and the communities where we do business. Also, Boy Scouts of America, get involved. Go camping, learn about hunting and fishing, gun safety, cleaning a gun. You'll get to do a lot of cool things. Fishing, how to clean fish, how to man up, be a man. That's what we need more of in our culture, and we do it in the Boy Scouts of America. I did it 4.5 years, probably drove our Scoutmaster insane, but we camped 2 times a month, most every month of the year. And Reforest, Mississippi, folks. Get out, plant trees on your private hunting land, your lake house, in the city, in your residence, or in the medians, in the roads and highways around wherever you live. We're here every Monday through Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. Central. And if you miss us live, go to 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta. Proud to be associated with the great folks over there. They're expecting 4.3 million plus visitors to the website this year. And after this show, you can always go 11 to 1 Eastern. Chuck Oliver, Dan Matthews, Southern Sports Today. Just college football back to back to back to back. Buddy Martin show on Facebook at night. It's a great world we live in, folks. Jimmy Hodge with us up in Lake Zurich, Illinois. Matt Dean over in Memphis. Let's get talking about some sports. And look, we're hopefully going to have a call here just a few minutes with him. He's buried deep in an underground bunker, a writing center. Lauren Smith, patriarch of Georgia and Southern football. He and Haywood Harris, David Housel, great ones like that. Langston Rogers at Ole Miss. Talked about the book he's doing on Kirby Smart and the 21 Georgia Bulldog National Football Champions. Yeah, he said he'd have a few minutes. He's almost finished with the book, folks. So we're going to get him to kind of talk a little about what he's writing. And Matt Dean with us in the first segment. Second segment, we'll be joined by Gordon Ford. Gordon, alive and well. He's back. The trench coat wearing reporter, McGruff's twin brother, will be on with us talking about college expansion, what's going on at Ole Miss. He knows Keith Carter, the AD there, well. We'll talk about more of what's happening in Oxford. In the second hour, we'll be joined by Andy Humphrey, KTGR up in Columbia, Missouri, talking about Missouri. They get ready. Eli Drinkowitz, they're going to be on the podium day one at Media Days in Atlanta. And in the fourth segment, our great friend Jason Caldwell, award-winning writer, Alabama Sports Writer of the Year, Jason Caldwell of Inside the Auburn Tigers, will join us. Folks, it's a great day. Great day to be an American. Great day to talk about college football. And Matt had you on a couple of days ago, and that was so much fun. I said, damn it, I'm going to get Matt back on again because we talk about the business side of sports. And Audrey and I are in Memphis all the time. You drive by roads. I was over there on St. Charles, all that neighborhood, all around roads. It's incredible. It's a magnet. And that's a small college. And you think about the effect that a college, a university of any size has on the neighborhoods around it, the town, the economy, and all like that. And we got into this the other day. I like what you said. Money is sent back down, could be $5 to $7 million from the playoffs to all different schools. Got Division I, Division II, Division III. Rhodes has over $300 million in their endowment. Their alumni and their people care too, don't they?
A tremendous amount. I mean, we would not have had the success we've had through the years in our athletic department without support from the top of the food chain, from the president to their leadership team, to the direct reports, right to the athletic director. That being said, right now everybody's feeling some of the inflationary crunches, especially a place like us. Diesel fuel prices. Every time you go fill up your gas tank, you may not look at that number, but as an athletic director, I always did, because that really determines affordability on our charter bus travel. Because we're not, Georgia, we're not getting on a charter plane to fly to our games, or most of our games are always going to be in a travel situation where we're taking a bus. So inflationary costs are real for a small college athletic department. Bus travel alone, Rob's gone about 20 to 40% for us this upcoming year. And despite our beautiful campus and our very thriving endowment, that's a real expense for us coming into fiscal 23 year.
Yeah, and that's something that's really critical. You got gas at anywhere from $4.20 to $5, and in some parts of the country, it's the original 13 colonies. I'll just say that it's $6 and $7 a gallon. You bend over. You get out of your truck or car to get gas, and it hurts. And those numbers are real. Matt, what do you think is going on at the SEC schools, at the Pac-12, the Big 12, all over the country with the budget part of it? Because yesterday Gordon was on, he's going to be on with us next, but we had Yancey Porter, and he said Ole Miss's athletic director, Keith Carter, they have put on hold the $350 million project they were going to do on the other side of the stadium, and said, look, with NIL and all this other stuff, we want to hold on to that money. It's been raised. Apparently it's already been raised. And see, we got other things we got to do. They got a nice stadium at Oxford. I applaud Keith Carter for doing that. Build up a war chest, but $350 million. Now, I'd hate to be the architect or the contractors, the builders on that job, but I hope they're going to do something. But Matt, I'm telling you, when I am the king of the world, when I win the lottery, you're going to be on my staff. You're going to be there as AD, because you're pragmatic. And again, it all goes back to your roots growing up in Iowa. So what kind of discussions do you think they had at Ole Miss to get to this point? Was that booster driven, or just going back in there and crunching the numbers themselves? I tend to think it was from all fronts.
I agree with you, Rob. I think everyone had a part in this, and I also think Keith has done a wonderful job. And I haven't been on the show in a while, but kudos to their baseball team. What an incredible run for that national championship. But I think it's smart to bank that money for now. You've raised the money for that project, and let's let the market and some other factors in our economy play out, where some of our boosters may be more likely to give in the next 12 to 18 months, as probably comparable to right now. For us, that's always a concern. Is there are times when you can do an athletic capital campaign, and there are times when it doesn't make much sense. It would be really hard for us to do an athletic capital campaign right now, just because of the last 7 to 8 months of the economy. So you want to try to tie those things in. As far as Ole Miss is concerned, ever since Keith has taken over, just been an uptick across the board. He's had some tremendous hires. I really expect basketball is going to take a step this year too. I'm hoping so, because I love Kermit. Kermit's a tremendous man, a tremendous coach. And I want to say this, and this is not an excuse, but COVID has made it extremely difficult for college coaches working with 18 to 22-year-olds. We're getting kids recruited now, guys, where the 2 years they were in high school, they were doing Zoom classes. It's very difficult from a transformation from that to come back to normal college class settings where you're getting pushed, let alone on the athletic practice field or on the basketball court. So there are so many things. We're not completely through the cycle of getting back to where we really were pre-COVID, in my opinion. And that's why you see some programs that have not gotten through this clean. Just let's be honest.
Yeah. No, you're right. And you look around, you can let it continue to control you, or you can fight your way out of it. And I'm seeing that in the Southeastern Conference from the very beginning. Took that attitude of, look,
Yeah,
we want safety of these student athletes. I mean, anyone that thinks that they don't is an idiot, because they have kids too. They've got husbands,
right.
wives, and I mean, so all this disclaimer that everybody has to run, like, I certainly care about the athletes. Duh,
Yeah.
of course we do. But I don't think people appreciate what an athletic director does and his staff around him to come to these decisions. But Keith Carter, I don't know if he's an accounting major, finance, whatever, but they got a top 3 or 4 in the nation accounting school at Ole Miss. Dr. Jimmy Davis, the advisor down there forever. And just look, that is smart. They've got that money, and they're in the midst of a $2 billion fundraising campaign. Jimmy, this ain't your father and your grandfather's Ole Miss athletic budget, is it?
No, it's not it's not anybody's grandfather's Ole Miss or whatever school you support's budget. I mean, these are different times, and I think as of right now, Ole Miss is wisely taking a look at the overall landscape, and I think specifically if you're
I'll cut everybody off. I got to redo it again. Accidentally cut them off. I got to call that number. Ready?
Is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished.
God. All right. As we were saying, Jimmy, Matt, you're there. Okay, Matt and Jimmy, this discussion we're having, it's good. I had a little technical difficulty there, talking about the athletic budgets and all, and this isn't your father's and your grandfather's Ole Miss. Jimmy, you were making some great points. Let's pick back up. I can't hear him. Okay, Jimmy and Matt, as we were saying, this isn't your grandfather's and your father's Ole Miss athletic budget. It's massive, and Keith Carter done a heck of a job making these really decisions like, hey, let's hold off on the $350 million stadium expansion. Jimmy, I think it is a smart term, but you were making some comments about the budget and what Ole Miss is doing different.
Yeah, well, there may be other schools thinking the same thing, but they've made it public that they're going to take a step back and just hold tight. And I think a big reason for that is that there are still some uncertainties. I think maybe one of the first things on the list is when Texas and Oklahoma are going to join the SEC, because you know that when it becomes public when that will be, then you also know that renegotiation of the TV contract will take place. And when that takes place, a lot of people are speculating that the value of the $350 million a year deal that was negotiated last year before it was known Texas and Oklahoma would be coming into the league could be doubled. And when you know the date officially of when those two schools are going to be competing in the SEC, you know that there's going to be a lot more money that comes into that contract. So again, there are uncertain times right now, and you just don't need to move if it's not necessary. So yeah, I think it's a really good idea, and I think there is a lot of smoke and fire behind these rumors that Texas and Oklahoma could be moving into the league maybe by the start of the 2023 season, because the 4 new Big 12 schools that are going to be replacing Texas and Oklahoma are going to be ready for competition, I believe, for the 2023 football season. So it would just make sense to go ahead and let Texas and Oklahoma leave. And I have no doubt that the SEC and ESPN would be more than happy to chip in to help pay for that exit fee. Now, it was originally listed at $80 million, but since a year has passed, I'm sure that number has dropped, and they're going to negotiate probably a term that will be acceptable for both parties. So again, I think that's one of the big factors there, and I do think other SEC schools are keeping that fact in mind also.
Matt, and speaking of those numbers, other athletic directors are going to have to make that decision. What about you're getting hit up to buy season tickets, seat licenses, and all that? Then you've got the NIL people calling you up, and it's almost double jeopardy. How would you approach it as an athletic director to not run into donor fatigue and just wear your people out?
Well, I think one of the things that I agree, and I talked about it earlier, is I think maybe in a way that's what Keith Carter's doing right now, is kind of putting some things kind of, just wait and see mode. I think we have to be respectful in terms of where donors are. If we just, you mentioned donor fatigue, even at our level, guys, it's a real thing. And you have to be conscious, and you got to know where your board sits, especially at the smaller college level, but that's no different than the highest levels. I think, it's a double-edged sword, because if we don't have an NIL initiative or collective, whatever you want to call it, it's going to affect us in recruiting. But we can't keep going to the same people for this money. And I think, you have to widen the scope. And that's why, going back to Jimmy's point, it's so critical. If they double this TV deal with SEC, let's say that happens, that money is going to give you a lot of relief as an athletic director to take care of everybody else in your department and take and less pressure, except when capital projects, of course. But it just really helps you from an operational standpoint. That money is crucial. One of the big reasons why USC is going to the Big Ten, so they can really help all of their Olympic sports with that extra funding on a year-by-year basis.
Well, the money obviously is big. It's everywhere, and we look at what people are getting in the distribution, and that's your answer is right. You can't keep going to the same people over and over. You're going to wear them out. You know, how many times did Theodore Cleaver ask or Larry Mondello ask for an advance on his allowance? And his mother goes, I gave it to you the last 6 weeks, and you bought junk and
That's
candy. I mean, that's what happens. And it's like, okay, well, what are you spending the money on? That's what people, and then you better be winning, because I'm going to tell you what, these NIL collectives, whatever they are at every school, if you're not winning a bunch of games with the guys that you're paying them to play, that's all you're doing. To say it's anything other than that is silly. The way I look at name, image, and likeness would be, once you've done something, then you can cash in off of it. Professional athletes historically, Joe DiMaggio didn't start making ads for Magic Coffee or whatever it was before he was a baseball player. He did it, while he was playing, but it was well into his career endorsements. And I think he signed a $100,000 contract, which by those days standards was huge. But I'm telling you right now, you look around the country, you got a kid who's a junior in high school and you're offering him an $8 million NIL deal. That is pay to play, because he has not stepped foot on your campus. He's still in high school, and he's not even old enough to vote.
Correct. And that's the problem with this model. That's why certain institutions are really struggling right now, because the whole design, you go back to the first legislation, was exactly what you described, Rob. It's like, okay, you're going to come to campus, you're going to do something, and then basically, someone is going to reward you for that success in the name, image, and likeness realm. And now it's a recruiting inducement, which honestly is illegal, but everybody's playing that way, so they have to fix the model. We all know that. Getting back to the one business point I just want to make too, I can't stress this enough, is everyone knows that you have to do what it takes to field that football team every Saturday, that competitive basketball team. But the whole model has to be looked at as an athletic director, and that's why a lot of the revenues, I know it's not capital projects, but this is what really helps these athletic directors, take care of everyone else in their department. And that's why people are jumping.
Yeah.
They need more money, because right now they're not raising as much money, and it's harder to raise money for operational funds. It's much, obviously, capital projects is where the fundraising comes in.
It is. Look, listen, let's do this. Hang on with us, Matt. And we've got our good friend Lauren Smith over in Athens, Georgia, patriarch of Georgia and Southern football, on the Mount Rushmore up there with David Housel and Haywood Harris and some of the legends that keep us informed. But he's writing a book right now about the Georgia Bulldogs 21 national championship football team. And Lauren, we'll just keep you a few minutes. I know this is a critical crunch time. You're in the red zone on the book. Is that fair to say?
From a timing standpoint, yeah.
And
it's been a challenge. Kirby Smart is the busiest guy there is. I mean, I think the model was probably set by Nick Saban at Alabama. You come home from winning a national championship, get one night in your own bed, and 2 days later, it's business as usual. You go back to work. You're forgetting the past and moving forward.
Yeah. The book, what's it been like? The people you've had a chance to talk to. I mean, one of my favorite stories in college football recently is the native of Blackshear, Georgia, Stetson Bennett IV, and I'm still waiting for him to get that NIL deal with Stetson hats.
Well, he would be a big hat with cattle.
Yeah, that's
right. Well, Stetson is just a marvelous feel-good story. I mean, a walk-on to win a national championship, and that's just unbelievably unbelievable. So he's not gotten the respect he is due, and I guess some of that's because they really don't know him. They really don't appreciate his rags to riches journey, and he's a better athlete than people realize. First of all, the reason he got the job, in my opinion, he fits the the play action game that Georgia underscores offensively. So he can come out of the pocket, make plays with his feet, and he does it at propitious, critical times. So I just think he's an exceptionally heady quarterback, great kid with a great heart, and he finds a way to win. And it's fun talking to him. I took him down to met him in his hometown of Blackshear and went by the grade school where he started out and went to his high school, moved around town with him, and you can't believe the response he gets in Blackshear, Georgia, way down in deep South Georgia. So he's one of the most interesting stories, I think, that come along in college athletics recently. Now he's the incumbent quarterback at Georgia. He wants to win again. So you can't be, all athletes can't be 6'4", the prototype, got good feet, good speed, good quickness, and all of that. That happens to a lot of athletes, but you don't see them at Stetson Bennett's height and weight. So I think he dispels that notion that you've got to be able to see over the line of scrimmage. He just gets out of the pocket and finds a way to make plays, either finding somebody downfield. He has marvelous touch on the football. I think that's a factor that has not been underscored when people evaluate him. He finds a way to put the ball or see if he can run under it. So I just think he's a winner, and he deserves all kinds of tribute, but he won't get any from those who evaluate the position, and he ain't going to be the first round draft choice of the New England Patriots, but he's going to win for Georgia, and I think that's a marvelous story.
Well, what would Larry Munson have been saying about him getting ready, going, hey, he's not that big, he's undersized, he left, he came back. I love this guy, wouldn't he?
That sounds about right. I think Munson would be taken by Stetson Bennett, because to Munson, he would have been a giant killer.
Yeah. I mean, I just, last year, you laid it out there and told that story about Stetson and this whole team. And yet there are still some people that, well, we got all these other 4-star and 5-star quarterbacks on the team. Why is he coming back? Man, the first thing I said when Georgia clinched the national championship in Indianapolis was, I hope that guy comes back if I'm a Georgia fan, because you're right. He is a winner. He finds excuses to win, and he is the kind of kid you want to read stories at bedtime to your little kids or your grandkids about overcoming the odds and not letting other people write his story. I mean, I'm a huge Stetson Bennett fan. And again, the people from Stetson, if you're listening, give this guy a hat deal, boots, Western wear. He's a winner. Jimmy, jump in here. Matt, come on. Yeah, he's
well,
so
Lauren,
special.
Lauren, judging from your visit with Stetson, I'm wondering if he was going to be back to play quarterback for Georgia this year. I thought maybe the local citizenry might have just immediately ousted the mayor and had a quick referendum and elected Stetson to take the job. I imagine his popularity is, off the charts. And, in connection with that, you're out among the masses a lot, although I know you spent so much time on this book. But what is the mood? We can imagine what it is among the Georgia fan base all over the state. But is it still just as much excitement as within the first weeks after winning the championship, or are they switching their thoughts to the season? And we all know if Munson were still around, he'd been worrying about that Oregon game for at least 3 months now.
Well, no, he said he would have started worrying about it before the last season ended. But I think Stetson has proven all of his critics wrong. He just doesn't. I don't know, what is it that makes people, and I appreciate the long ball in baseball, particularly when your team utilizes it to win a championship. But what is it about the power of the long ball that takes away from a guy who did it as Ty Cobb might have done, steal 3 bases, even home. He stole home, 50-something times in his career. What's wrong with a guy getting on base?
Hey, Rob.
And you're going to get on base a lot more often, and then if you can do more by getting on base, getting in scoring position, and actually stealing a base or two, you got a chance to do that more often than you are to sort one out of the park. But people are attracted to the long ball in baseball.
But Lauren, he threw a couple of big long ones in that championship game.
He sure did. And one to A.D. Mitchell, that put us in a position to where we were seeing that the line of scrimmage was sort of shaded in Georgia's favor there towards the end of the third quarter. But that pass, and that was a big league throwing catch, and that was a position to take over the game, which we fortunately were able to do.
Well, the long throw to Pickens in the first half, I thought, really kind of sent a message, and it allowed the Dogs to stretch that Alabama defense a little bit.
Well, I think you're right. Certainly, he's a kid that this doesn't happen often. When a kid who's just an average kid, not going to get a lot of attention as he's developing, but he grows up with a desire to play for his home state school and thinks about winning a championship, and it all comes true. That just doesn't happen that often, and now that it has, I think it was probably the most beautiful story of the 2021 championship season.
It is. Lauren, we promised we would keep you on in just a few minutes. I know you're busy. And we want to get you back on here again soon, but we got to go to a break. What is the expected release of the book, and have you come up with a name for it yet?
Well, we're toying with 2 or 3 names. It'll come out in spring. It'll be a retrospective. It'll be Kirby's thoughts. In fact, that's why I got to keep the nose to the grindstone today. Yeah. Seeing Kirby is not uncooperative at all. But I'm telling you, the 2 days after the championship celebration, he was saying, 21's in the past. I got to look ahead. And I think all coaches today who want to win more than one championship, he certainly doesn't want it to be one and done, is in that position. So that last week, I finally captured him for most of one day. And he says, I hope that'll do it. I said, no, I need one more session. He said, well, I don't have any more time. It's football season. I said, well, we got some things we still have to do. He said, what do you do? He said, well, yeah, I'm ready when you are. He said, no, I got to speak in San Antonio. Go with me.
Yeah.
Hello.
Well, we're looking forward to getting him on. Lauren, thank you so much for taking time to be on here with us. We got to take a break. We're having a technical issue here, but I'm going to be in touch with you soon. But this has been great insight, and we're looking forward to helping you promote that book, because when you write a book, it's a treasure. I've read your book. What do you got, Lauren? So many great stories on there. But thank you so much. Have a great rest of your summer, and look forward to getting you back on as we get closer and closer to football season.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Have a good week.
All right. You too. Thanks so much. All right. Let's do this. Let's take a quick commercial break. We got Matt Dean on, Jimmy Hodge, Gordon Ford joining us. And we'll be back after the break to talk with Gordon. Some more college football, expansion, and whatever's on his mind after the.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown again with you. Gordon Ford, Matt Dean, Jimmy Hodge. Gordon jumping in on the party line. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Goober says hey. Hey to Goober. Look, we've been talking about what what Keith Carter did. You know Keith, athletic director at Ole Miss. Holding off on a $350 million project. Now, I think it's smart. Matt Dean, the business side of sports, Jimmy and I, we've been talking about it. This ain't your father's or your grandfather's Ole Miss athletic budget. They're in the midst of a $2 billion, let me say that again, $2 billion fundraising campaign at Ole Miss. And I think they've already hit that goal, and I won't be surprised if they don't go past it. So put all your Mississippi jokes in the trash, because Ole Miss has done something. I don't know many other schools in the SEC who've had a $2 billion campaign like this and surpassed the goal. So hotty toddy, McGruff.
Oh yeah, I mean he's done an excellent job as athletic director. You know, a lot of people kind of didn't want him at first because he was a basketball guy and all that sort of thing. But I mean, one thing about Keith is he ain't afraid to make a decision. I mean, he's fired coaches. He's done the things it takes. He's raised money. I mean, to me, I think, Ross Bork was a great athletic director, but I think Keith has surpassed him. And Keith's done a lot of good stuff, and he's a good guy, and he's done our show. And, I think the future's really bright at Ole Miss. And first of all, Rob, I appreciate you having me back on. I know they took my key from the building, and you gave it back to me today.
Yeah, right.
But I'm happy to be here.
Hey, let's listen to him, Matt. Hold on, Mr. Krabs, here he comes. Let me get the world's smallest violin out there. Gordon, we love having you back on here, man. Matt, you heard what Gordon just said. Again, looking at the business part of it, Keith Carter has made some tough decisions. And I'm also glad he made the decision, because I like him, because Gordon started telling me about Kermit Davis in 1988 when he was at Idaho, but he's backing Kermit. And last year they had a rash of injuries. It was a disaster, and they recruited well. And Matt, isn't that what you're supposed to do as an AD, is look into the future, not just make emotional spur of the moment decisions?
I applaud Keith, because I think Gordon would agree. Him and I have a bromance over, Kermit Davis. Just think Kermit's one of the best coaches in America. And it's kind of, I tie it in with what we talked about a little bit ago, guys. And, coaching college athletics during COVID at any level was just incredibly difficult. They had injuries last year. I expect them to rebound this year and get back to the NCAA tournament. And I think probably if you ask Kermit, he would think the same thing.
I think he makes the tournament. And one of the reasons is, if you look at the basketball league, you have 6 new coaches, Rob. Okay. So that's 6 teams that have the bulk of their players transfer out. And they picked up some, but I don't think they picked up as many as they need. That should be 6 wins for him right there. So that should be an improvement. If he had Ruffin early, he would have won some more games. They didn't have him in the early going. And then, they lost a lot of guys. They had one game against Georgia where they had 3 of the backup starters were out and won that game. And at the end of the day is, people wanted to fire him like they wanted to fire Bianco. You see what happened. Bianco wins the national championship. But Kermit's a great coach, and I think he'll bounce back. Hello?
Yeah. Just thought y'all were going to go into a role right there. Stepped out for a second. But bottom line is, with an athletic director, Gordon, and guys, he's got to be someone who's got a backbone, got a spine. He can't cave to pressure, but you got to listen to your people. to the folks out there that are giving you the money. Gordon, with NIL, do you think, and I think Yancey was on with us this week, and we were talking about, like, the old way of recruiting, it still happens. Okay. So you got the old way, quote, under the table, and now you got NIL. Now it's legal, is what somebody calls it. Gordon, from the people that you talk with, and you talk with a lot of Ole Miss fans and big donors, you're up there, wearing your ascot at every Ole Miss game in the suite, drinking old fashions.
No, I have to beg my way in the suite, man. So,
yeah, right.
But I am up there, yeah, and I do talk to people, and I know some people are involved. I mean, Chuck Brownsville has an NIL. I don't know if you know that or not.
I didn't, but what about donor fatigue? Hey, you got to buy these season tickets. And, oh yeah, give to NIL too. I don't, again, hate the people that are putting these NIL deals together. They're just taking advantage of what the market offers. But are you hearing a lot of donor fatigue? People going, man, I ain't giving everything I got. I mean, there's a point that I just say no.
Oh no, you're right. But I mean, you're asking them to donate facilities. You're asking them to donate for NIL, and the bottom line is, people. We're in inflation right now. That I don't know if they got enough money to go all the way around on all that. So, that's probably why the football stadium is being put on hold a little bit.
Yeah. So that $350 million, Gordon, and I'm just curious, that money's already been raised, so they're just keeping that in an escrow account?
I don't know if they've got the whole 350 raised. I know they had 150, I think you said the other day. I could be wrong. I was listening to them, but yeah, I mean, they don't have any problem getting the 350. How about that?
Yeah. Okay. So now, but you think about colleges around the country. You're not seeing people expanding their football stadiums. What you're seeing is shrinking the stadiums and having more luxury premium seating. Gordon, you and I have been to a lot of games. You a lot more than me, but I counted it up. I think I've been to 52 Ole Miss games over the years. Been to more Auburn games than anything, but been down there a lot. It's just so close to Memphis. And I think about the improvements on that stadium. 350 million. A&M did, after Johnny Manziel won the Heisman in 2012. They did a $400 million. Wasn't that a $400 million deal, Matt? I know your son worked out there for the last 4 or 5 years. Now he's at Oregon, but that was a massive project, over $400 million. And again, you're not seeing anybody in the Power Five tearing down their stadium and building a new one. They just keep updating the one they have, because it's all about how old the stadium is and tradition versus the newness of pro sports. We say it every day, but isn't that true, Matt?
Yeah, when you go to Kyle Field, it's about the experience, and part of the experience is, getting in that luxury suite box. When I had the fortunate to go with Gordon down to the luxury suite box at Ole Miss, I had not been there in a while. I was just shocked and amazed at how great the stadium looked. And when we were there last year when Ole Miss beat the Aggies, even the in-game experience from like DJ music and how they handled the crowd, and lights, going on and off, which is kind of like the new theme going around every, program when they have an event. Just the in-game experience is tremendous. And obviously, for years, the Grove has just been out of sight in terms of popularity. But that's no different in a lot of places. When I was at Kyle Field, now you have 105, whatever the capacity is there. But then when you talk about the expansion after the Manziel Heisman Trophy, Rob, they put a lot of that money into those corporate suites. And, when you go on that stadium, there's an area in there where they do a lot of their programming. It's just tremendous. And I think that's why when you go visit, if you're a recruit and you go visit these SEC schools, it's, the NIL is an extreme advantage, but they also know if I go to an SEC school and I'm a college football athlete, I got a great chance to play on Sundays. And that's what's going on too. It's about the development of players, and I think no one does it better than the SEC.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Yeah, well, Gordon, I was going to ask you, we're 3 days away from SEC Media Days getting underway. And what's the outlook from the Ole Miss angle? coming into preseason camp. I know there's a lot of excitement anytime you've had a double-digit win season. That's a big deal. It's Ole Miss's first Sugar Bowl appearance in a half century. So what's the mood of the fan base there, and what do you sense seeing and hearing from Lane Kiffin next week in
Well, you're not really
Atlanta?
hearing anything from Lane Kiffin. He doesn't talk to anybody. But what we're getting from out of there is this team could start off because they have a very favorable schedule. I mean, they open up with, I think, either Tulsa. No, they open up with Troy State. They got Central Arkansas their next game. They go to Georgia Tech, which is a winnable game. They play Tulsa at home, which they should win that. Kentucky will be a tough game, but I think they win that. So and then they got Vanderbilt there. So that should be 5 to 6 wins early. So that would say that more than likely that I think they're going to probably win between 8 and 9 games. Maybe could be more, just how the ball falls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to have to go contrary with you on Lane Kiffin not saying anything at SEC Media Days. Last year, he came out with
he may do it then. He just hadn't done it lately.
Yeah, well, last year when he came on and made his appearance the day after Saban came to the same group of reporters and talked about Alabama's ability to be competitive in NIL when he talked to the 15,000 coaches at the Texas High School Football Coaches School and talked about Bryce Young's NIL deal. And a reporter asked Lane Kiffin, what do you think about Bryce Young's NIL deal? How much should Matt Corral make? And Lane replied, well, if Bryce is getting $1 million, Matt's got a really successful season behind him. I think he probably ought to get $2 million. You know, I mean, he definitely can get the attention of a lot of people around the country, be it media, coaching staffs, because when he says a bunch of things, and that's a great venue to be able to do it, it gets a lot of attention.
That's true, but I mean, he really hasn't come out in preseason and really said anything about the team going forward. I know he says things like that, you know, and, you know, like during recruiting in December of last year, he had some guys flip from Mississippi State. He had this green Christmas shirt on that said Merry Flipmas. I mean, he does crazy stuff like that. But, you know, as far as talking about the in-depth, what we got, what's here, where it's going to be, you don't hear a lot of that.
Well, I look around. It will be at Media Days this week. And day one, you got Brian Kelly, Eli Drinkwitz, Lane Kiffin. That's going to be fun. And look, all 14 schools, they're all going to bring 3 players. But I looked at the itinerary for Media Days. It's 21 pages long. And every minute, we talked about this yesterday with Gary Harris from Tide 100.9 and Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa. And every minute, they're on 10-minute cycles. And if you're talking to somebody, there's somebody, their handler is there tapping them on the shoulder. We got to get you here. We got to get you there. We need a Steve Spurrier type character at Media Days. Somebody that says something other than a canned soundbite. I remember 30 years ago in the newsroom at Channel 3 in Columbus, Georgia, we were joking around. We could take the 10 most often heard quotes from everybody that we interview in sports, and 30, 40, 50 years from now, they're still going to be the same. They're still going to be relevant. And man, that is true. You know, how many coaches are going to come out and say, well, excited to be back? What's the over and under on the number of times each coach will say, I'm excited? You know, that's the one, because they'll go out there and say, excited to be back. Had a great summer. Everybody came back. Great shape. Summer workouts were great. Got a great freshman class coming in. Our returning players look great. Strength and conditioning program looks great. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about being excited. I'm excited that I'm here. I'm excited that I get paid $5 or $6 million a year to win 7 games. This is the greatest country in the world. I mean, God, we need Steve Spurrier to get in there
Well,
and let
yeah,
loose.
you're
guys.
right, but Lane ain't gonna do that. I mean, but Lane's gonna say something crazy. You mark my word.
Yeah, but I just Matt, think about it. And I don't know what Big Ten media days are like. And I don't know what ACC media days are like. But the SEC has had characters in the past, and now everybody is really measured in everything they say. Man, let her rip. We talk about it a lot, but you used to have the deals at Lake Martin. For a weekend, you'd have all the sports writers with coaches from Auburn or Alabama or up at Lake Rayburn in North Georgia. Not Lake Lanier, but what's the other big one? Where's Saban's house? What lake is that? Lake Ocoee, Lake Oconee. But you get everybody together and they're playing cards and drinking. What's on the record's on the record. What's off the record's off the record. We need more of that. Everybody's so scared something's going to get out. Somebody's watching your practice. Seriously. It doesn't really matter, does it? Matt, Jimmy,
No,
Jordan? Because
it doesn't.
it's when you call the
doesn't.
plays is what makes it special, isn't it, Matt?
It is, and you're talking to a former coach who did it for almost 3 decades, and we're always excited in the preseason. Come talk to us after we lose a couple tough games, and we're going to we readjust our goals during the season. We're going to readjust our vocabulary. But you mentioned media days, and I don't know if you guys every conference needs Mike Gundy, in my opinion, from Oklahoma State. He had a great one-liner last week. This week I don't know exactly what it was, but basically someone was asking about Oklahoma and Texas, and he says, "Well, heck, I don't even know why they're allowed in our business meetings right now. They're not going to be part of us moving forward." And I don't know exactly what Mike said, but it was a great one-liner. I think there's also going to be some interesting. We got really quiet with the Saban and Fisher dialogue lately, guys. That's got to be getting ready to jump back on the forefront, I would think. And what Lane does a great job of, he's a pot stirrer. He'll jab at both Saban and Fisher, and it's really funny entertainment, in my opinion.
It is. And
Matt,
you know what else?
Matt,
I'm gonna say one other thing, Jimmy, before we go there. On the Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State. I got a lot of respect for what they do. They've got a great program.
They do,
and they don't get enough credit. Last year they had a defense that was the best I can remember them having, and I think you're going to hear a lot more out of Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy's been there. He's got to be pushing 20 years, but I like that guy, man. You ask him, does the dress make me look fat? He's going to tell you if it does or doesn't. We need more honesty. Jimmy, jump back in. Sorry about that.
No, I mean, what they asked him was if he foresaw the Bedlam series or rivalry with Oklahoma continuing, and his reply was pretty simple. Well, the fact that they've left the conference on us means that Bedlam is over. So the answer was no, but he made it in very clear terms. And, he's got that ability to do that. And again, the Big 12 to me is one of the most interesting puzzles out there because, and from an administrative standpoint, Matt, I know you have to be really impressed with what Bob Bowlesby did in his final year as commissioner of the Big 12, responding with that earthquake announcement that Texas and Oklahoma were leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC. And he responded by being able to get UCF, Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston. And now, even though his time as commissioner will be officially over in the next couple of weeks, the fact that they're in a position to add Arizona and Arizona State, I'm just really impressed with what he's been able to pull off.
Jimmy, I agree. And you look at the model going forward, we talk about what Notre Dame's going to do between the Big Ten and the SEC. I'm really intrigued about the Big 12, if they can pull it all together, because there's some terrific schools still, in that conference. And the additions, you look at the football years that Cincinnati and Houston had last year. You look at the recent history of UCF. Really, really good additions to that league after the loss of Oklahoma and Texas.
Well, Bob,
don't forget BYU. They've had good years.
Yes, they have.
And they're a worldwide brand too.
Yeah. 15 million, 20 million Mormons. And you're playing guys that are 23, 24, 25 years old. When they come back after 2 years, you can get in pretty damn good shape riding a mountain bike around for a couple of years. That's what they have to do, with a short sleeve shirt and a black clip-on tie and some birth control glasses, knocking on doors. I'm telling you, that's tough. What they do, they go all over the world. They come back and they learn. They're mature, man. That BYU fan base is rabid. I think that's gonna. Man, Gordon, we're about out of time. I know you got to get back to work, and Matt, and we're about to go to the second hour. We're actually going up to Columbia, Missouri to talk with Andy Humphrey about Mizzou. But Gordon, any final thoughts? We'll hopefully get you back on next week. I know you're a busy man, probably eating a biscuit.
Well, I'm finally healthy enough. I've been, had some problems, but I'm good now. But I do have final thoughts. I mean, this expansion. And Rob, this as well, and Jimmy and Matt, is that when you go to those SEC media days, there's a lot of secrecy, and all of a sudden you get socked in the mouth. Oklahoma and Texas are coming in. There ain't no telling what's going to happen next week. So I'm really curious to see if some team comes in the SEC you're not thinking of. And the last thing, but not least, a lot of these guys like that are in the ACC, I want to say they got to buy their way out like $60 million. Yeah, I think I'm correct on that. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be
real curious.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I'm looking forward to being in
Last but not least, Rob, everybody talks about Florida State. I had a friend that worked there. They don't really have a whole lot of money like you think.
I know.
Clemson and those schools did, but Florida State's kind of, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, that's the thing about Florida State is they've only been playing football a little over 60 years. Everybody around them is 130 plus. And trust me, I know you think, well, what does that matter? It matters. Hey, we'll talk with you next week, Gordon. Let's take a quick break, everybody. We'll
Thank
be back.
you for having me on your program.
Hey, of course, love it. And Andy Humphrey will be on here with us. He's on the line with us now from KTGR up in Columbia. And Matt, we're gonna get you back on next week talking more about the business side of sports. But we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back with hour number 2, SEC college football. We'll talk about it. Somebody has to.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Okay, Rob Brown back here with you. Hour number 2 on this Friday, July 15th. Andy Humphrey, KTGR, up in Columbia, Missouri, hosts a daily sports radio show covering Columbia sports, like University of Missouri. And I know your broadcast partner covers the St. Louis Cardinals. And we got a lot of Cardinal listeners. Of course, the dream weekend is in football season. If your team, you're on a road trip, you're going to Columbia, you can spend the night in St. Louis, go to a Cardinals game Friday night at Busch Stadium, and then head over 107 miles west on I-70 to Columbia, University of Missouri. Jimmy Hodge is on here with us right now up in Lake Zurich, Illinois. Andy, Eli Drinkwitz getting some positive traction as he's going into another year at Missouri. They had a pretty damn good recruiting class. He said he wanted to start building a wall around St. Louis and Kansas City and getting players. He's doing just that. How quickly do you think we're going to start seeing the results on the field improve? Eli's a very strong offensive mind, but let's talk about this upcoming team. And I know, he'll be on the board in the first day in Atlanta at Media Days at the Omni College Football Hall of Fame SEC Media Days.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, here's the thing. If all goes well, this would be the year that they start to see those positive results you see in a winning record. Here's the thing. The first 2 years were exactly 500 teams, 5-5 in the first year, 6-6 last season in 2021. And yeah, you ride that wave of momentum with recruiting, with a new head coach, and I think independent of him being a new head coach and building a new program, I think Eli Drinkwitz is still a pretty good recruiter. So I mean, it's not to take away from his prowess there, but that honeymoon only lasts so long. And so once you get those talented recruiting classes into the building and you have a team that is almost essentially all your players now, it's time to win. And year 3 is a pretty good time to do so. So, I mean, a whole lot of folks are saying, look, if this is not a winning record for Eli Drinkwitz at Mizzou this year, there will be some serious questions asked, because you do need to turn that into results to not only, keep your fan base on board, but also to tell those recruits that what they are trying to build can work here at Missouri. So that furthers your sales pitch to the class of 2023 and 2024 and beyond, and ultimately keeps everybody else in the building happy. So the time's kind of now to make sure that those results happen for Eli Drinkwitz.
Well, you look at it last year, got that win late over Florida. I mean, Florida basically was a sinking ship, but it doesn't matter. It's still good to beat the Gators 24-23. But talent-wise, this roster compared to what it was 4 or 5 years ago, how much better is the Missouri team?
Compared to, I would say, 4 or 5 years ago, you're talking about the Barry Odom era. And,
yeah.
Everybody kind of, talks about, how Barry Odom kind of fizzled out towards the end. He got in some good talent. He had some of those holdovers for Eli Drinkwitz to be able to use. Guys like Tyler Beatty last year, he came over in Barry Odom's recruiting time. And so other players down that offensive line as well came over when Barry Odom was here. And it's not to say that Eli Drinkwitz hasn't brought in similar type players, if not better players, that could turn into real contributors down the road for Mizzou. We just haven't seen it quite yet. So this is kind of the year where that page gets turned, where you look at pretty much the entire offense and you say, this is Eli Drinkwitz's team now. And so I think we're going to see very soon whether or not that mesh of players is going to create something better than it did 4 or 5 years ago. There's a lot to replace this year. I mean, we talk about Tyler Beatty, how he was the school's all-time leading rusher last season. You have to find somebody else to fill that role. The quarterback position is a big question mark going into 2022 as well, and into this fall camp period. So we'll see. It's going to be first few weeks. You probably need to rely on the defense a little bit that has some more experience that can get you through some of those first few games coming up. But in terms of talent, recruiting talent, Eli Drinkwitz, I think, has knocked it out of the park compared to what 4 or 5 years ago Mizzou was bringing in talent-wise. We just have to see that turn into results very soon.
Hey, one more question before we go to Jimmy. The front seven of every team in the SEC that gets to Atlanta, you're usually 2 or 3 deep on your front seven on defense. Rank this Missouri defense. Barry Odom, hell of a defensive coach, and he's doing a pretty damn good job at Arkansas. But that seems to be where Missouri went after some big linemen. And St. Louis produces a lot of football players. So does Kansas City. So does Memphis, Chicago. They tend to go into some big markets outside of the typical footprint of what most SEC fans see. So there's got to be a surprise player or two that you're looking for a lot of good things to come from this year.
Yeah, I mean, this defense does have a lot more experience. It was very clear throughout the offseason that Barry Odom wanted to try and get as much defensive line depth as possible. He went out and he got 6 transfer defensive linemen to really bulk up that position room. I think right now Mizzou has something like 21 defensive linemen in their room, and I think all but 2 of them are scholarship guys. So I have no idea how you're going to rotate 19 scholarship defensive linemen around. So we'll certainly see. But I mean, it's very clear that Eli Drinkwitz wanted to improve the depth there compared to last season. I think, the first 7 weeks last year, Mizzou's defense was absolutely dreadful. I mean, we're talking about a defense that was last in all of Power 5. You could probably take some Group of 5 schools and put together better defenses than what Mizzou had the first 7 weeks of the season last year. Towards the end, they did get better. There was market improvement there, but it still wasn't really enough to put them maybe, in the top half of Power 5 teams as far as defenses are concerned. There were still quite a few holes. So that was a major emphasis this offseason to try and supplement a few of those holes with transfer players. They went out and got Tyron Hopper, a really talented linebacker as well, to come in. A lot of folks are saying that he could be one of the bigger impact players on this defense from the get-go, right as he steps on the field the first time as a Mizzou Tiger. So I'm really interested to see how this defense responds, maybe having to pick up some of the slack early on this season as the offense tries to figure things out, figure out who the quarterback is, who your bigger go-to skill players are going to be, and then we'll see how that defense holds up in the end. But you're right. I mean, there were some pretty talented units the last few years, and there has to definitely be some improvement this year compared to what they had last season.
Yeah, and Jimmy, you look at Missouri. They're Kentucky, Missouri, the northernmost schools in the league. What is it about Eli Drinkwitz going into year 3 that gives you hope if you're a Missouri fan?
Well, he's obviously a very good offensive coach, but he's been able to develop young quarterbacks, and that's why I was really surprised. That their starting quarterback last year left the program, and we know youngsters in this day and age are kind of different. This is an instant gratification society, more or less, especially for younger players, and they've been used to starting most of their football careers, and lots of times if there's any competition for a spot, which is what you're going to have many times in a Power 5 program, and then if you get any kind of criticism whatsoever from the media, if there's any, let's say, consternation maybe in the locker room, there's a lot of things to deal with. But Eli, to me, is a very solid offensive coach, and that's a great attribute. And he seems to be able to handle situations like that and keep a team together. But I wanted to, get Andy's thoughts on it. But also, though, my first thought when you first came on was talking about, recruiting and where Eli is coming into his 3rd year. But around 3 months ago, you'll probably remember that I asked you about the big announcement that came out regarding Missouri getting really committed to an NIL program that's going to allow them to compete with anybody for players, and that several former Missouri players are fairly prominent members of the Missouri legislature, and that they had a bill on the governor's desk that was ready to be signed. Where are we at on that particular matter?
Yeah, so that bill is signed now. It is now Missouri law, and in fact, the day that it was signed by Missouri Governor Mike Parson, Mizzou came out with a new program internally within their athletic department to allow their students to be able to opt into programs like getting their own trading cards with Tops and Fanatics, and Nike had signed on with Missouri's athletic program to like get names on the jerseys and have people buy them. And if you buy somebody's jersey, that player gets a little bit of the sale. So right away, Mizzou opened up some of its regulations with NIL, trying to be more involved in the process with helping those students get those types of deals. And then also that same day, the collective that you were talking about, well, there was a collective that was already forming and had already been in place for the last year since NIL has been legalized over a year ago now. That collective, called Advancing Missouri Athletes, went ahead and went public. So not only are they getting donations from big donors or anything like that, but just any old Mizzou fan can go onto their website and donate to their collective, and they use that as funds for NIL opportunities for some of those players. And that's the collective that was put on by some former players like Lawrence Bowers, who was a big-time basketball player at Mizzou about a decade ago, Bud Sasser, who was on the football team around that same time. So that's those are the two big things that happened that same day that a new NIL bill was signed. And I think you're right. It does give Missouri a bit of an edge against a lot of their neighboring states, not really particularly SEC schools, which I'm sure are going to be catching up with this wind of NIL laws soon. But, the schools like Iowa and Illinois and Kansas and Oklahoma that are bordering Missouri, and Missouri is battling a lot of those schools for recruits most of the time. So I think it does give them an edge in that ball game at the moment, and we'll see who catches up. But yeah, that was a big development last month when that bill was signed.
Andy, when you look at this schedule coming up here, you open up with Louisiana Tech and Abilene Christian, Kansas State. You get into the schedule, then it's going to be all SEC. Okay, got to go to Auburn. You got Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, Tennessee. What about Missouri? You just finished your first decade as a members of the Southeastern Conference. Your first 2 years in the league, two of the first three, you played in Atlanta for the SEC championship. You had Gary Pinkel as a coach. There have been some changes and all. Are Missouri fans beginning to feel comfortable being in the SEC? Because I know with Arkansas, it took them a while. I've got a friend that lives over in Fayetteville, and he said that, for a long time, you would have a party the weekend always of the SEC championship game in Atlanta, and it was all by age. The older Arkansas people, they were all in the other room watching the Big 12 championship, and they were not really watching the SEC championship unless Arkansas was in there. They've been in 95, 02, and 06. But that's something, when you've been a member of another conference, and I think Missouri won 13 Big 8 championships in their history. They won a bunch. And then you come into the SEC, you start off again. 2 of your first 3 years are really strong, but then you've been struggling a lot of late. So what is that doing? What are they doing to engage that fan base and to get them to believe that, yeah, we're in the toughest league in America, but we have hope?
I mean, it's give and take sometimes. You have these sorts of years where you drop off from that huge high of making it to the SEC championship game back-to-back seasons, and then you kind of set expectations after that. And if you were set expectations of, Mizzou needs to be competitive, claiming the division, more often than not, or things like that, that maybe was a little too far-fetched. I mean, if you really step back and you take the grand scheme of things, Missouri's a team that could live around the middle of the division most years in football, and then the right team comes around, the dominoes fall into place, and you're able to compete for that championship once again. I think, 10 years in, I mean, I do think Missouri fans are starting to make this transition of, yeah, we're definitely an SEC school. I mean, if you think about the kids that are going to start as freshmen at the University of Missouri this year, 18, 19 years old, whatever they may be. 10 years ago, when they were 8 or 9, was probably, I mean, I know we're varying, differences, every single one of us, but most of us probably became, sports fans around 6, 7, 8 years old. No matter who you may ask, you might get different answers. But when they were 8 or 9 years old, Mizzou was in the SEC, and they don't really remember a lot of years when they were in the Big 12. Certainly not the Big 8. Now, that doesn't speak for every single Missouri fan, but for the new generation of fans, they know Mizzou is an SEC school, and they're not really going to think of them as anything otherwise. So I do think this fan base recognizes where they're at, the position that they're in. Conference realignment's definitely been the talk of the town. Just about any single college football town anywhere across America. I think Missouri, though, understands where they're at and wants to keep building their facilities up to a degree that, supports their athletes and then keeps them on par with the rest of SEC schools. Their new football facility, which is going to be a completely indoor facility, is still being built. They made renovations to the stadium. And really, I mean, winning can cure the lulls that attendance has given Mizzou over the last few years. So we'll see if those wins certainly come. That's ultimately how you do build your brand is by winning games.
Oh yeah, and in every sport, it just keeps getting stronger and stronger. And then you got Kansas City on one end, the bookends, St. Louis, and then Columbia, not technically in the middle, but close. So you draw from, and then you got the Boot Hill fans. I know when they come to the Liberty Bowl or anything like that, Missouri travels. They travel big, and they're, and I asked that question because it takes a while to integrate fully into a conference. So it's going to be fun to watch Texas and Oklahoma as they come in, because the first thing Texas is going to do is they're going to have to give up the Longhorn Network, and they're no longer going to have the bully pulpit in the SEC. They're going to have to get in line and take a number. Same thing with Oklahoma. But I think Texas drove a lot of schools out of their league because they got so tired of Texas saying, we're going to keep most of it. We're not going to share. In the SEC, it's a complete equal, no matter who goes, it's all distributed among the conference office and the 14 schools. Jimmy, I know you got another question for Andy. Let's go.
Well, I think, Andy, a big reason for the expansion into the SEC in 2012 that included Missouri and A&M, that made it difficult for Missouri fans was the fact that they were put in the Eastern Division. I think just geographically, it didn't make any sense whatsoever. But at the same time, when you're a new member, you don't have much leverage, and there were certain existing schools that wanted long-time rivalries preserved. But I think now it's 10 years later, it's a different time, and I think the time has come for when we come up or they announce this new scheduling system, which I'm 99% sure is going to be 3 permanent opponents. And they might not call them pods, but you're going to have a grouping with 3 other teams. And then you're going to play a 9-game conference schedule, and that's going to involve playing 3 of the other schools on a home-and-home basis for 2 years, and then the other 3 schools on a 2-year basis, home-and-home. So that way, every school in the league plays every other school in the league a minimum of twice every 4 years. And what are you hearing, or is there any speculation from your contacts about who Missouri's permanent opponents would be? I'm guessing they would, just from a geographical standpoint, they would probably like to have Oklahoma, Arkansas, and maybe A&M, or what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, nothing really concrete. It really is all speculation at this point. If you had to ask me personally, if I were picking Mizzou's three permanent opponents, I mean, those first two that you mentioned are almost no-brainers. The FCC is definitely going to want to try and continue Missouri-Arkansas for as much as possible, and that rivalry has grown in a sense. So, I mean, I think that does make a whole lot of sense for Missouri to keep playing that game against Arkansas. Oklahoma makes a ton of sense once they come into the conference. It's not only a former Big 12 rival, but a Big 8 rival too. They go a long way back, so that makes a whole lot of sense. The third one is a little bit up for debate. I mean, there are teams that might make more geographic sense. That maybe Texas A&M, Texas, of course, former Big 12 foes there. Maybe Kentucky or Vanderbilt, since they're closer to Missouri than most of the other schools. I'm interested to see where the SEC goes. And if it were me making that decision, to be quite honest with you, I might go a little bit off the board, and I would say South Carolina. Missouri and South Carolina have had some really intense battles in football over the years. You go back to the first year that Mizzou won the SEC East in 2013, when they played South Carolina in Columbia, Missouri. That was a hard-fought game, won a couple of overtimes. It was kind of a heartbreaker for Mizzou in the end. South Carolina ended up coming out on top. The next year, Mizzou went to Columbia, South Carolina, and beat them with a late score. And those games have kind of gone back and forth over the years. I mean, heck, the rivalry has intensified to the fact that even the women's basketball teams don't even like each other. They have had an intense rivalry over the last few years too. So it doesn't make geographic sense, but I think just if you want rivalries to continue, which this is why they would institute this kind of scheduling system in the first place, I think it makes a lot of sense to have Mizzou and South Carolina play each other. Their football teams, when they play every single year, they play for a trophy called the Mayor's Cup, because they created that because both schools are in towns that are named Columbia. So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if they would actually go that route. They would probably stick with maybe the geographic logistics there. But if it were me picking it, I'd be interested to see whether South Carolina gets a look as maybe one of Mizzou's permanent opponents.
Well, they've had a couple of interesting matchups with Kentucky that have gone down to the end. And that would be much closer. And I think both of those teams, I mean, are very similar from a competitive standpoint, and also the different sports that they seem to be pretty even at, or at least very competitive. There's a lot of interest whenever they play. So I was just kind of curious about that, because, again, the way expansion's going, you never know. I mean, if you hear some more announcements in the next year or two, all that will go out the window, and they'll have to be rearranging the scheduling setup again. You never know.
It's crazy. I mean, we're kind of in flux the entire time when we're talking about this sort of stuff. But I mean, hey, no matter what happens, Mizzou's going to be along for the ride. And to be honest with you, that 16-team scheduling system would make a whole lot of sense for really just any school to be able to have a player that plays 4 years at a certain school. They'd be able to see every single stadium. I mean, for now, it looks really good. But yeah, if you expand to 18 or 20, then yeah, you throw everything out and you go back to the drawing board and you try and create something else. But we'll see.
Well, I know school administrators are happy with the payouts they're getting at the SEC meetings every May in Destin.
Oh, big time. Yeah, you let the scheduling figure out itself. If you can expand, you expand. It's better for everybody. But yeah, and then the scheduling can be an afterthought after that. You could always make the scheduling work. But yeah, expansion, if you have the means to do so and you have the right partner to expand with that can bring value to your conference, you can do it. No question asked.
Well, you got to think about with Missouri, it's just such a logical thing. Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. If you have a pod like that, but then Arkansas is going to want to be in there with Texas and Texas A&M. It's going to be a tough call. And then you make a great case, the Battle of Como, Missouri and South Carolina and Kentucky. Jimmy, you're right. I think what you need to do is find rivalries that engage your fan base. And Missouri needs to do that in a big, big way. Give me Missouri's historically biggest rival. Kansas?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. And the border war. And we remember in 2007, that was pretty darn cool when they played each other. And Mangino, man, he was over on the sidelines. Yeah, that was a big. Both teams were in the top 5 in 2007, and that was the height of that rivalry. But I'm just thinking, what we see, Andy, a lot is we try to force rivalries. We try to force Arkansas, LSU. We try to force Missouri, Arkansas. But that is logically, it should be a rivalry because there are a lot of players from Missouri on Arkansas's roster, and both ways. Okay. But I just, from a fan, if you're the athletic director at Missouri, you got to sell tickets, and winning cures everything. Okay. Just like a rising tide floats all boats. But give me inside the SEC, give me the 3 teams more than anybody you want to beat, and the Missouri fans get the most excited about playing.
Well, it's within the SEC. I mean, they've had plenty of really hard-fought games against Arkansas over the years as that rivalry has kind of continued. And I'll say this: it's been kind of one-sided. Missouri has dominated those matchups too. So I mean, it almost like as an end-of-year sort of game, it gave fans a little more hope than some of the other ones because it was towards the end of the season, and you knew that was kind of the end of the line. And if they're able to get that last win, it felt really good going into whatever bowl game you had, or if you didn't have a bowl game, that was it. You finished your season with a win, which happened many times over the last few years, especially when Barry Odom was the head coach. Arkansas, I would think, is one of them. Mizzou would love to, in the new SEC, beat Oklahoma. I mean, the year that they did it in 2010 when Oklahoma was number 1 was one of the heights. Also, right before the SEC era, it was one of the heights of the Gary Pinkel era when they beat them on their home field when Oklahoma was number 1. I think that would be a great one. I will say, I mean, it's kind of a question as to the third, as I said. I mean, South Carolina's one. Kentucky would be a great one because Kentucky's been a thorn in Missouri's side for such a long time. And then a couple of years ago, they finally beat them after something like a 5-game losing streak against them. So that would feel good. I think Mizzou fans would love to try and beat Texas, of course. They were not happy with at first with Texas coming into the conference. They were the reason why Missouri tried to jump ship and go to the SEC. So, I mean, there's a hatred there for Texas too. So I think that would be another game that you look at where if Missouri fans see that on the schedule, they circle it and they say, I really hope that Mizzou's the winner that day because I want to get back at the school that drove us out all those years ago. So, I mean, that would make a whole lot of sense also.
The litmus test for Missouri fans is, would they be willing to give up their tickets to a Cardinals home game at Busch Stadium to go to a Columbia, Missouri home game for Missouri? Because that is a strong competition, because the Cardinals, outside of the Yankees, are the winningest, most tradition-rich program in the history of Major League Baseball with 11 World Series titles. So, hey, Andy, thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday morning to join us. Great segment with you. Every time you're on here, you're really well prepared. You know your stuff. Tell people how they can follow you and look forward to our next visit.
Yeah, for sure. At Andy R. Humphrey on Twitter, and you can also follow at KTGR Big Show. That's our show that we have every weekday afternoon from 4 to 6 on KTGR. So you can find that as well.
All right. Hey, Jimmy and I will talk with you anytime you want us on there, and follow us on Twitter. We'll follow you. But this is great stuff. Let's take a break. We're going to be right back with Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers, talking some more college football on the final segment on this Friday, 15 July 2022.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Okay, Rob Brown here with you, Jimmy Hodge. Jimmy, look, I like what we just talked about with Andy Humphrey because it gives us a perspective that I don't have on Missouri, and most people really don't know Missouri's program that well. But I'm learning more every time that Andy's on, and I think about Missouri. You know, if I'm Missouri's athletic director, I want a schedule full of teams that my fan base it gets excited about. I'm not saying, throw away your Cardinals tickets, but Jason Caldwell's on the line with us right now from inside the Auburn Tigers. But if Missouri fans are willing to give up their Cardinals tickets, and of course they can get rid of them, everybody wants them to go to a Missouri game. That means it's a big, big game. All right. It's always a big game on the Plains. Alabama Sports Writer of the Year, Jason Caldwell of Inside the Auburn Tigers is with us. And Jason, man, I like you so much. You're a great writer, great guy, but you're a truth broker. You're right. Auburn's got to start closing the gap and proving to recruits out there that the program is moving in an upward direction. You look at the first 5 games at home, and if I'm an Auburn fan, I'm saying go 5-0, change the narrative. Because if you win 5 games, all of a sudden everybody's practicing a little harder, getting up a little earlier, and doing all the little things that Coach Harsin talks about that if you don't do Monday through Friday, they show up in a big way and can destroy your team on a Saturday. But this recruiting year in Alabama, we talked about it over and over, but you're the boots on the ground. You go out and you see these guys play. 23 years you've been doing it, and I imagine you watched a game or two and played football at Sylacauga, for the Aggies. So you know the game. You mentioned about, 6 weeks ago in one of your columns on the website, Inside the Auburn Tigers 24/7. Auburn was in good shape with 16 of the top 30 players in the state, meaning they're having good connection, good contact, whatever. How's that going for Auburn right now? Right now they got 4 commitments, 3 in state, 1 out of state, but all 4 are 4 stars. But numbers wise, they still got a long way to go, and a lot of good things can happen, can't they?
Yeah, a lot of good things can happen, but you're right. I mean, kind of that narrative has been, just gotta win games, and my response has been, how many? How many is enough to change somebody's mind? I don't know that, but no question that, in my opinion, to have a chance to do that, at a minimum, you got to be 4-1 in your first 5 games at home to have a chance to do that, because of the back end of the schedule with Georgia and Alabama both on the road. You're at Mississippi State, you're at Ole Miss. It's going to be a brutal second half of your schedule. And how many is enough? I don't know that answer. Nobody knows that answer. It all depends on the individual kid. But you look at it, and the thing that for me right now is, from an average star standpoint, Auburn's, they're doing a really good job. But I still look at a glaring issue, and that's on the offensive line. They've got 1 offensive lineman committed. And you'll go, well, that's okay. There's still plenty of time. The problem is a lot of the guys that they focus on have already made decisions. And, you might turn a guy. It's hard to turn 5 or 6. And so, that's to me is still the glaring issue. We've been talking about it for years, the lack of offensive line recruiting, and they've been saved by guys coming back for 6th and 7th years, I think, in 2022. But this thing comes home to roost in 2023, and even if you go out and sign 6 or 7 guys in this class, how many of those guys are going to be ready to go next year? Because you're going to need them. And so I don't know. They kind of put themselves behind the 8 ball a little bit, and it's not all they're doing. It started under Gus Malzahn, but it's continued under Brian Harsin. And they just haven't done a good enough job recruiting on the offensive line. And you can have all the other guys you want to on offense. If you don't have those guys and they're not competitive, then you're in trouble. And so, I think the opportunity's there, and there's still guys that absolutely are still looking at Auburn, and they're still in the mix with. But there's also a lot of guys that have already made decisions. And so it's a critical time, in my opinion, the next 2 months when you start talking about this program, with it, being, guys on campus, visits, and winning football games. I think we'll have a much better picture of how this thing's going to go when they wrap up this 5-game homestand to start the year.
Well, we have Rex Castillo and Jack Patterson. You know them, Channel 3 over in Columbus, Georgia.
Yes.
And they were on the show with us. They're on throughout the year. I'm going to get them back on again in the next week. And they said last year at the Auburn-Georgia State game that was a game, I think September 25th in Auburn. And it went down to the wire. Auburn was very fortunate to win. Had it not been at Jordan-Hare, I don't know if it would have happened. But they said they counted 41 players on those 2 rosters, Georgia State and Auburn, that they had covered in high school in the coverage area of Channel 3, News 3 on your side in Columbus, Georgia. Everybody knows you've got Columbus, Phoenix City, the bi-cities, but there are a ton of players right there in the backyard. Let's look at Phoenix City Central. Patrick Nix is coaching there now. I got to ask you, I mean, does his father have any kind of ill, feelings toward Auburn? Because, he thinks, well, my son wasn't treated right.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop you right there.
Yeah. I just want to make sure.
Auburn's got a 4-star wide receiver committed from that school.
Yeah.
In this class, Carmelo English.
Yeah.
If there was anything going on, there'd be none. And
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna stop. That's not him. This family loves Auburn.
Yeah.
They always have, and they always will. So I'm just going to stop you right there.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking. I'm just saying, I can't imagine it, because I think about Patrick Nix and his family and his father, Bo's grandfather. They're Auburn people, and you know what? Sometimes things don't work out, but I just wanted to ask you that, because I did not feel that way, but it's something to ask because there's so much talent over there. And my son told me
but this is an issue that goes back well beyond Patrick Nix. Auburn, other than Jonathan Wallace, that guy's been a college football coach himself for many years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a run of talent through Central Phoenix City, and Auburn rarely gets those guys.
Yeah.
And they do have a 4-star kid committed right now, but I mean, it's some of the city, but hey, in this class, it's a little bit of an Auburn issue. Jamarian Parker's a guy that visited a bunch last year, and he felt like on a couple of different occasions that Auburn didn't show him enough love. And whether that's right or wrong, if a kid feels that way, then it's right in his eyes. And so I think that had a huge impact on his recruitment in this class, and he's committed to Penn State right now. That could change. That's a long way away from home, but it's not just it's somebody else's fault. Sometimes you can have an issue and it be your own doing, or maybe somebody else says, hey, they didn't do enough for me. Well, maybe there's other guys you got higher on the board, but sometimes it just doesn't work. And I don't think it, in this case, I don't think it has anything to do with a grudge. I just think sometimes it's a place that Auburn has not recruited and has not had much success out of Phoenix City in quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, it was. You had Wayne Trawick over there, Jamie Dubose, and I lived in Columbus, Phoenix City for 2.5 years, and there are a lot of Auburn fans there. There are a lot of Alabama fans, but Phoenix City Central, I think you and Mark Murphy told me a couple of years ago there were 30 Division I players identified on that roster at Phoenix City Central. And I think Auburn, and that's why I asked that, because I know Patrick Nix, he loves Auburn, his family does, and that's never going to change. But people worry about all these things. You know what I think will cure all of Auburn's problems? Just start winning and have some offensive linemen come through the program and get drafted to the NFL in the first 2 or 3 rounds and have success. That'll stop all this. But I mean, it goes back. We had this discussion with Olin Buchanan, Texags.com earlier this week. And you look at, why isn't the state of Texas and A&M and Texas, why has there only been one national championship team from that state in the last 50 years? When you look at the state of Florida, there have been 11, and there's 12 million fewer people in Florida than there are in Texas. So the question is, they're playing too much hurry up, 7-on-7, hurry up, no huddle offense. You're not getting that down in the dirt, offensive lineman, physical, day in and day out, offensive line going up against the defensive line. And I think that has spread around. But how much spread, hurry up, no huddle, empty set backfield football do you see in your footprint in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida?
Every bit of it. It's not any different here than it is anywhere else. It's 7-on-7 all summer. They do all those things, and they play that way in the fall. I mean, Thompson is producing players left and right. They've won state championships, and they don't get under center one time. Hoover didn't, for the most part, many of the years they were successful. I don't think it's as much that as they haven't kept their best players at home, especially quarterback. And the same thing's true of California. I mean, you got to do is look at Alabama's roster the last few years, and you want to see the difference in where those things go. Like those quarterbacks from Texas and California that are winning national championships. And to me, Texas has recruited well. Texas A&M has recruited well. But the best players from those states, they're going other places, especially recently. And look at the same thing for Florida. That's been the difference here lately is Ohio State and Alabama. Alabama historically never was really, other than Derek Thomas, never went to South Florida and got a bunch of football players. And you run down that list of wide receivers that they've had the last few years, other than a transfer to after Julio Jones, they were almost exclusively Miami, and then John Mechie was from Texas. They're getting the best players from those states, and that's been a huge deal. A&M actually, from an offensive line standpoint, Texas A&M's probably been as good as anybody not named Georgia or Alabama in this league the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But they haven't had the skill players. They haven't had quarterback and wide receivers to do those things because those kids are going somewhere else. And that's what I'm talking about with Auburn right now. I wrote about it yesterday. It's playmakers in the passing game. That's where national champion. You got to be good on line of scrimmage. That's never going to change. But you can be great on the line of scrimmage. Georgia was as good on the line of scrimmage as any team I've seen in the last 25 years last year. If Alabama's 2 wide receivers are playing in that game, Georgia don't win a national championship. With all those guys, it still wouldn't have been good enough. And that's where the name of the game is right now. You better be able to score points and do it in a big play fashion because that's what it takes now to go out and win at a high level.
Yeah, I think Mechie's from Canada. I thought from Toronto.
You're talking about Waddle.
Yeah, Waddle.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle from Bellevue, Texas. But yeah, Jason, that's a great take on it. That's why I asked you that question, and you gave an answer that makes sense, and every bit of it. It's that 7-on-7. That's why the struggle. There's just not the numbers of offensive linemen out there, and the few, percentage-wise compared to what it was 20 years ago, elite tackles and all. They're going to the same 5 or 6 schools, and right now Auburn is not on that guest list, and they've got to get back on that list. Jimmy?
Yeah, but you can also argue that Alabama last year had the best offensive line recruiting class in in modern times, and yet none of those guys started because it's not an easy adjustment to come into the SEC. And also, Alabama's scheme from an offensive line standpoint is not the easiest to pick up. So, lots of times you just can't throw guys in there and hope they can get the job done. But Jason, what I wanted to ask you was, since offensive linemen at the high school level are, it seems like fewer in numbers as far as elite players go, we also throw in the fact that there's tremendous competition for those players. And so now the instant fix is to try to get transfer portal guys, but yet at the same time, there's tremendous competition for those players. So what do you see, Auburn trying to do going forward? Just trying to find diamonds in the rough. And also, we've overlooked the junior college players in recent years because, they don't have the facilities that these smaller, even Division I schools have now. And lots of times junior college players are there because of, academic struggles, and not necessarily because they're not intelligent, but in their early years in high school, and when they got maybe to a big time program in their first or second year, they just weren't focused on academics. There's a lot of pressure at this level of football to perform. And if you're focusing all your time on that, then it hurts you in other areas. So what do you see Auburn specifically trying to do to kind of solve this problem with the offensive line?
That's a good question, because you're right. There's not a lot of those guys. Alabama's one of the few schools that's had a couple of true freshmen step in, going back to Jonah Williams. And then obviously the last couple of years, they had a guy that started for 3 years and was a first rounder at offensive tackle. And so they've been one of the few that have had guys like that jump in. But it's still more prevalent now than it's ever been, but it's still not an option for most schools. There's only, I'd say, 3 or 4 of those guys a year that are probably prepared to do that. And, like Rob said, most of the time those guys are going to the same 3 or 4 schools. That's who they are. The transfer thing is the interesting part, because everybody just assumes we'll just snap our fingers and we'll go get a guy. Well, you mentioned Alabama. Alabama had one of the best offensive line classes we've seen last year. What did they do this year? They went out and got a starter-ready offensive tackle transfer from Vanderbilt and Tyler Steen and plugged him in. Those schools are doing the same thing. So the teams that are recruiting the best are still going to get those guys. So it's a double whammy for the other teams going, look, you're not getting the 5-star, but the guy that wants to play 1 year and take a shot at the NFL, he's still going to Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. It's hard. It really is. That's why if you're recruiting, Auburn they probably need to sign 6 or 7 offensive linemen this year. You probably have to actively recruit at least 25 guys to give yourself a chance.
Jason,
and that's 25 guys a lot.
Yeah, Jason, and interestingly, we go back to when guys like Vince Young and Cam Newton, big guys like that, who in the past might have been an edge rusher, linebacker, tight end, they start playing quarterback. That changed the quarterback position. And go look at now, the prima donna position in the NFL is the wide receiver. It's become the same thing in college. I mean, but God help you if you're a coach. I know he's talented, but I would not want Antonio Brown anywhere near my locker room. Okay? He's a cancer. He'll destroy your team. And I think he's got mental issues. But anyway, let's talk about Eric Kiesau. I like that podcast, Hooked on Harsin with Brian Harsin. He had a really good one with Eric Kiesau. And people at Auburn and around the country really don't know much about this guy, except they don't even probably know how to pronounce his name, Eric Kiesau. Hope I'm right. But look at his mentors, Mike Bellotti, Jeff Tedford, former coach at Cal, and, Dan Hawkins, Dirk Cutter, Chris Peterson, Houston Nutt for 8 months. when he was there at Boise. But he is a guy that pushed really hard for the coaches at Cal to take a chance on a junior college guy that nobody else wanted, Aaron Rodgers. I think that tells you he has an eye for talent. I know every blind hog finds an acorn eventually, but still, I think he's really good. He was an analyst when he came to Auburn, because he stayed behind at Boise, I think, because he was in contention to be the head coach. He didn't get it. I understand that. But offensively, his biggest challenge, we know about the offensive line, but the quarterback, Zach Calzada, Holden Geringer, TJ Finley, Robbie Ashford. Somebody's got to step up. The old saying, if you got two quarterbacks, you really don't have a quarterback. Give me your gut prediction on who you think is going to be the starter. Doesn't mean he'll be the starter after the third game or at the end of the season. But give me a name.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably go with Zach Calzada right now, but I mean it's wide open in my opinion. And Zach Calzada didn't take a live rep in the spring after having shoulder surgery. He throws the ball really well, and he's got a strong arm. He does all those things. He got some experience. But it's going to be a wide open competition when they hit the field. I would go with Zach Calzada. But it's I think it's going to be the battle, and how quickly can you narrow it from 4 to 3 to 2? Because that's really what it takes to be able to really have a competition. And I've still been of the mind that I'm not certain that it doesn't happen until week 1 when you face Mercer and you go, okay, we've seen some of those guys, but there haven't many live bullets thrown. You're not going to go full contact in the fall with your quarterbacks. Put them out there, let them go against a live defense, and then going into week 2 against San Jose State, maybe that's when you've narrowed it down. I don't know how it's going to work, but it's obviously a hugely important piece of the puzzle for this team. As is, can you find a number 1 wide receiver? Can you find a dude that can go make plays? They haven't had one in a while, and that makes it really tough to play quarterback, and it makes it hard to run the football against the best teams you face. I mean, we saw that last year. Auburn's running game still, you look at a number and you go, man, they're still pretty solid. But you take out Alabama State and Akron, and all of a sudden you go, well, okay, numbers are a little different. And you go, okay, let's plug in Georgia, Texas A&M, and Alabama. And they averaged, 50, 60 yards a game. That it's almost an impossibility. And to me, it all goes back to playmakers and the ability to throw the ball, because all I have to do is look at Alabama. I mentioned that game earlier. Alabama, the first time they played Georgia, they were able to do what they wanted to do offensively. With neither one of those wide receivers on the field in the national championship game, they're about 30 yards rushing. That's the difference in having those playmakers outside that teams respect, and the ability to attack in the passing game. If you take that away, then teams will take away that running game. They're good enough to do that.
Great point. And I think Auburn's tight end room is deep. Jarquez Hunter, Tank Bigsby, and I look for Sean Jackson I think he's out of Hewitt Trustful. I think he's going to have a role. I mean, he's a human wrecking ball, the old term used for Trey Blackman, the great linebacker out of LaGrange, Georgia. But if I'm Auburn, I get familiar with my tight ends real fast. Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, every team is, worried about something. And I think certainly we've gone over the offensive line, and a quarterback is the most critical position in college football. And I know there has to be some concerns there because, Calzada had an up and down season at A&M, not to mention the fact he's coming off shoulder surgery. And personally, I thought there were some times that Finley came through for them. And I thought in the Iron Bowl, he made some really clutch throws. He's got some experience, and, I think he fits that mold of what kind of Harsin likes in a quarterback. I mean, he can throw the ball down the field, and he's a progressions type quarterback. But again, I think he really needs more moments of success. If he can build his confidence up, I think he's got tools. I mean, he's big, he's got a good arm and all of that. But the same thing can be said for Calzada. I mean, you just don't know until you go out there. But Jason, I was just wondering if there's anything you've seen in the other two quarterbacks that might give them a shot down the road.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. A lot of it depends on what you're looking for out of a quarterback. Robbie Ashford is the most athletic of the guys, the most physically gifted of the guys, I think, in terms of Zach Calzada. He can throw it more. TJ Finley can throw it too. They got some strong arm quarterbacks on this roster that can throw the football, and so that's where you start. But it all comes down to running the offense and distributing the football, getting teams in the right play. All those are things you can't really measure by just watching. And I tried to caution people that about a spring game. When you're in a spring game, the defense is basically giving you one look. They're not out there trying to fool you. You're playing straight up. That's the game where you can do some things that maybe you can't do in other games. Robbie Ashford has a ton of ability. He just doesn't have a lot of quarterback experience. Can you get enough of that early in the season to gauge him if he's in the mix? That's one thing that having potentially a couple of games to do that could be helpful. But Holden Gardner is a guy that's really talented. Has played a lot of football in his high school career. It'd be a big move up from 4A in Georgia to obviously playing in the Southeastern Conference, and so it's going to be impossible to have a 4-man battle. And so for them, they got to make a decision early on. So somebody better jump out of that group, or a couple of guys better jump out from that group pretty quickly and go, hey, here I am. I'm in the mix. And that's where you lean to the guys that have the experience. And that's why I think, Calzada, TJ Finley are the two guys that, in my opinion, have the most likely chance going in.
Jason, we've run out of time. Great segment, as always, when you're on here. And you answer the questions, give out great information, and people need to be able to follow you. Tell them how they can do it.
Yep, you can check us out at autigers.com, auburnundercover.com, as well as part of the 24/7 network. You can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
Yeah, and Carmelo English, the wide receiver out of Phoenix City Central, I think my son said that's the highest rated receiver. I mean, we've signed other 4-stars at Auburn, but he's the highest rated in a lot of different categories that Auburn's had. So that's a great sign if a kid like that commits to you. And I would think and hope. Last thing, Big Cat Weekend is coming up.
Yep, got here the end of next weekend, or right around the 30th, so 2 weeks away from Big Cat Weekend. An opportunity, a lot of 2023, but 24 and 25 guys for them on campus to kind of kickstart heading into fall camp and 2022 season.
All right, great stuff. Hey, great show as always, everybody. Hey, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help people with the expectation of nothing in return. And remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. People, act like it. Everything's going to be all right. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 a.m. Central, as we are every Monday through Saturday on Sidelines. Until then, have a great one. We're out of here.